Welcome to this edition of the Hoel Roofing and Remodeling Podcast. Today, a friend of mine is here, Pastor Paul from Brandywine Community Church, our home church for my family. We've known Pastor Paul now here for, I'd say probably 4 years. I don't know, time.
Maybe long. When did you start Hoel Roofing?
Well, yeah, technically we really got it off the ground the spring of 2019.
All right. Yeah.
So I guess
a little bit before that.
Yeah, it would have been the fall.
We were in life group.
Okay.
We were in life group before that.
So
18.
It would have been the end of 18.
Yeah.
So holy cow, 5 years now. So so just introduce yourself. Tell us your position at church. You know, I know that's changed here in the last year or so, and just tell us a little bit about your family, and we'll go from there.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'm Paul Galbraith, pastor at Brandywine Community Church. I direct our Celebrate Recovery ministry. It's a Christ-centered 12-step program that we offer on Thursday nights, and then also oversee all of our local outreach ministries. And so most of those are led by our members, and I just try to equip and encourage them to live out the vision that they have to make an impact in the community. And so I've got a beautiful wife, Samantha. We've been married 8 years. I think 8 years. I should have just stayed confident. Yeah.
Don't worry. Adam will not cut that out. So when she watches this, she'll hear it.
She'll know. 8 years. Love you. And then we've got three little ones. Adeline, she's in second grade, 7 years old. Gavin's 5, and he just started kindergarten. And then Juliet, who's 2.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, one thing me and Emily's always said this about you and Samantha is you guys were the most authentic, real, like pastors, husband and wife team that we've ever been around. Like, I mean, this isn't a dig on any other church or anything like that. We were attending a church in the fall of 18. It would have been like one Saturday night. I just looked at Emily. I was like, we're going somewhere else tomorrow. Like, I felt like mine and Emily's souls were starving.
Yeah.
The kids was probably doing okay.
Yeah.
And we got some heat from it because we left a Rush County church.
Yeah. Sure.
To go to Greenfield.
Right.
And I mean, I literally remember, and this is really shallow, so don't judge me here.
No.
We picked Brandywine to try.
Yeah.
Because it was the closest to Knightstown.
That's fine.
and I told Emily, I was like, let's try this one.
Yeah.
And I said, if we want to go to any other ones, because we actually had some friends, now I'm drawing a blank, of going to one of the other churches there in Greenfield at the time. And we went to Brandywine once, and Emily's like, nope, that's it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, and I remember we connected with you guys really quick. Also connected with the Fianos,
right. Nick
and Jamie.
Yeah.
And then I reached out. It was right before you guys had like a men's, I don't want to say it was a retreat, but a men's conference.
Right.
It was a Friday night, Saturday morning there. And I reached out and connected with Pastor Matt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew like the men's group was something that I needed at that time just because my family was so young.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of responsibility on the male to lead.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's how we got, plugged in there, and met some really good people with the Hams also,
right.
So absolutely.
Yeah, I think back to that group, that life group that we were part of, the Hams, you all, the Fianos, and several of us were praying through big decisions, whether it was a move or starting a business or taking a step of faith. And now, like 5 years down the road, looking back, it's like all of those decisions were big there, but so many of y'all and us too took that step of faith, and now like reaping the benefits of that. And so that's fun to see.
And it's I will admit, I was waiting for God to like talk to me. Like, and some people God talks to them.
Yeah. Sure.
And that's fine. He's never I went on like a spiritual retreat when I was dating Emily. And like that was one time that I felt like God was like, that is the woman for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, perfect, because I want her to be the woman for me,
Thank you, Lord.
But very few, if almost ever, besides that, have I ever felt like God was like, Bob, go do this. And I was selfishly like wanting to start the business.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like waiting for God to be like, I don't know, just open this massive door.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe I got to take that step. So, you guys, the Fianos, Nick, being self-employed, like,
Right.
he was a huge encouragement, and also gave me some business pointers, that still ring to this day, and I've leaned on him over the years of just as a friend, but also like sometimes I got to call him and say, what should I do there? Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. That's the power of a small group. That's the power of just community.
That's right.
Even if it's not church community, community is great, but, I just got on this. A friend of mine owns a construction company in Atlanta. Sent me a sermon. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad. Don't quote me exactly. I can't remember if it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The average male had 5 or 6 quality friends that they can genuinely call upon, like prayer, go out to eat.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like break some bread or something. Today, the average is less than 1.
That doesn't surprise me. Unfortunately, it's just we isolate so quickly, and then you can say this or that. I think social media sometimes makes us feel connected when there's no authentic, deep connection. But then I know for me, even as a husband and a father, like you want to be the best husband, the best father that you can, and that just takes time, takes attention. And if you're not intentional about creating space and making the call and creating time with friends, you get down the road a few years and it's like, man, those close friends, they're still there. I know I could pick up the phone, call you.
Absolutely.
And we could connect like this. But if it's not intentional and consistent, then you feel a little bit isolated, for sure. Yeah.
Well, and that was like Sunday. We walk into church. We've been real hit or miss lately, like way, really
That's
bad.
why I came to talk to you.
Okay, I figured.
I'm joking.
And like I was walking the older two back, and I saw you, and you're in a deep conversation. Then about the time I went to pass you, you're like, "Hey, Bob." I was like, "Hey," and I was like, "I'll catch him when I come back." Well, you moved on, so that's why I shot you a text Sunday. Then you're like, we can do lunch Tuesday. I was like, let's do it Tuesday because I know my schedule. In a month, I would have looked up and I'd be like, I never got with Pastor Paul,
Sure.
So, and I never really have a plan for these podcasts.
Okay.
We just kind of just go off the fly. But something that kind of hit me today in some quiet time, prayer time, was like, all right, God, like what do I need to talk about here? And I guess one thing that I feel like, let's talk about isolation. Let's talk about depression as a dad, as a leader, because, we're, you've got a lot of responsibility at the church. You've got a young family. Our kids' ages are almost identical, and, just kind of talk a little bit about that, because like I said, I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves. Right. And one thing that I've learned this year, myself, is it's okay to put ourselves first.
Yeah, that's right.
And our lives are ever so changing. You always hear, you hear couples that like they did a really good job raising their kids, but they never had a relationship together.
Yeah,
so once the kids flew the coop, all of a sudden they're like, who are
living
you?
with a stranger?
Sure. And it's hard because like you want to be that parent. One thing that I learned, I just took Rhett on a father-son trip, and we went to St. Thomas, and we did some really cool things. We went night kayaking. He got to go snorkeling just because the beach is just so freaking clear.
Yeah,
and like a couple of the kids there just had like the little snorkeling gear thing. He'd slap it on and just and see fish,
Right.
And then at the end, it's the Revolt Mastermind group that I'm part of and been part of for a few years. The guy interviewed him and said, Rhett, what of all the things we did, what was the coolest? Yeah. He's like, spending time with my dad.
That's it.
And I started weeping on the video.
Sure.
And he's like, what do you mean, Rhett? Like, he goes, just at home, he's always working on the business. Yeah. And it's like, man, if he only knew, like, part of it's for selfish reason. Part of it, just I'm human. I want to prove people wrong. Yeah. That I can do it in small town Rushville, Indiana, or I can do it coming from the background that I came from. Yeah. But also part of it is like I want to give my kids an opportunity. like I want them to be a part of something. I want them to be proud of something.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good reminder though that what they want more than anything is just us, our time, our attention. I kind of had the same gut check moment this summer. We've had a couple opportunities to travel this year. Led a team to Israel, which was an incredible opportunity. Then got to go to Brazil and see some ministry there. Both times that I was gone, we planned some fun things for the kids to do with Samantha's parents, my parents. But then beginning of summer, my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, next time we do something fun, can you come too?" Yeah. It's like, we try to invest time, personal time, like give them time and attention. But if the only time they're doing something special, Dad's too busy working, or it's all they see is Dad wasn't here. And so we just said, all right, we didn't plan on it, we didn't budget it, but we're going to Florida for a week before school starts because they need us and just time and attention. And so, yeah, I think as fathers, as husbands, like having that goal of I'm going to be the best I can be, but realizing like humility is the way we get there. It's not acting like we got it all together. It's not acting like it's being courageous enough to see where we don't have it together and then have conversations and get input and encouragement and advice. Because when we have all that pressure of we got to have it all, I got to be top notch every day, every moment, man, there's like, I know I just get angry because I know on the inside I'm not the top notch dad all the time, not the top notch husband all the time. And if I don't have an avenue to just talk about with my wife, hey, I'm a little exhausted today. Hey, I'm a little frustrated today. And express my weakness so that she can encourage me, so that God can give me strength and wisdom where I don't have it, man, then I just put too much pressure in it. And I know my outlet was just anger, not being patient with my kids and things like that. So that whole idea of just humility is so freeing because I know what I want to be and I know God can help me get there. But the best thing I can do is acknowledge where I'm weak and ask for him to give strength or ask other guys to give me wisdom so I can get there. So.
Well, and I'll never forget this one time. Nick Fiano, once again, has been really good to me.
Yeah.
And I called him one time, and he was frustrated. Mm-hmm. And he had told me, like, what an employee had done.
Yeah.
And, like, I think maybe, like, cursed at him or something on a job site. Yeah. And he's like, we just don't talk like that, Yeah. And he said, I can't remember if he said he wanted to slap the you-know-what out of him or something. And I was like, holy cow, Nick is human.
Yeah, right.
Like, Nick is just, I mean, he does such a phenomenal job of leading his family as a godly man, and sharing his testimony, and I mean, I know he was atheist before and all that. So, like, he's got a powerful testimony. Sure. But I kind of chuckled. And he's like, what? And I was like, man, I'm not being rude. But I said, I feel better about myself.
Yeah, that's right.
I said, you're human, Nick. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm human. Yeah. So that I mean, and you said this earlier, like social media, it's isolated, or somebody said this before, it's the highlight reel.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course, I put a picture of my cute kids on there, or I put a picture of when me and Emily go on a trip somewhere, or we're dressed up and she looks gorgeous, But every once in a while, I try to put the picture of us sweating, working our what off, and just be like, hey guys, here's a reality post.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Or I guess I should be real honest, and when we have a disagreement, say, okay, here's a real reality post, guys. We disagreed about this.
Let's live stream this argument and see.
Probably not.
That would be good for any of us. Yeah.
I had a friend. He's like, oh, you're so good at meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am until it comes to my wife, and then I expect her not to have the bad day.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because he owns a window and door company, so there's a lot of similarities. He started a couple years ago, so he's about a year and a half behind. It's kind of funny because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I had that problem. He was
now
struggling.
You don't have any.
No, I've got I don't have that problem anymore. I've got these 7 over here. Sure. So let's deep dive a little bit and what do you do intentionally? As a dad.
Yeah.
Just to, love these kids because, they just did a little, when we did that trip, the guy, William, is was a friend of mine that was on the trip, and he's a videographer, and he did a little documentary, and he called it 18 Summers because we get 18 summers with our kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just had a Facebook post. I just shared it. A memory popped up 7 years ago. Like I remember giving Rhett that hug that day.
Right.
I was just getting started in the roofing business. I was brand new at sales.
Yeah.
And Emily was a legit stay-at-home mom then with Rhett. And like, it was straight commission. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I had to make it work, And I literally remember that day of giving him hugging me. And I was just like, all right, little man, this one's for you, buddy.
Yeah.
And he had this little shirt, and I saw it the other day. Yeah. And it said outwork them all. Oh. And when I first started, that was my profile picture on my phone and my iPad.
All right.
I was like, that was my motto. Like I was going to outwork every other rep because I had to provide for my family. Sure. So, what are some intentional things that you do, with the kids?
Yeah. I think for a big area of success that or step forward we've made is having a healthy rhythm that allows intentional time. Because there are certain things like we value taking a vacation, budgeting out, planning out. Hey, we have to get away at least once a year, and if we can do it twice a year, we're going to try to get away for a few days as a family. And so early on in our lives, we were doing that well, but we didn't have a weekly rhythm of a Sabbath, of stepping back, and what we felt like we didn't have any margin in life is really what that led to. And so it made it hard every week to have the emotional energy or just the time to invest intentionally into our kids. It just felt like a race every day. And by the end of the day, you're just wanting them to go to bed because you want to have some time with your spouse. And so really, I think a couple things, like actually getting on a rhythm of a Sabbath, and that honestly took my wife stepping away from her job. She had a stay-at-home job. It was a blessing for a season of life. It's 20 hours a week. She could work Monday through Saturday, a few hours a day. But what it meant was my day off was Friday. I was off, but she was working a fair amount of the day, and then there was only a certain amount of time afterwards, and there was almost like so much pressure of, now we got to make this really great.
Right.
It sucked, to be honest with you. And so it was a step of faith. Her stepping away from her job just created a little more time in our week where we could have the emotional ability to look ahead and say, all right, what are we going to do? And then what I've learned is sometimes it's just the small things. Like when we talk about being intentional with our kids, it doesn't always take a St. Thomas trip.
Oh, absolutely.
But you know what? Finding each of them, God's created them, each of them different, and just finding how to speak into them and do something special around that. For Father's Day, the kids made a card. Samantha made a card, and she asked them why they love Dad. Adeline said, because he gives me ice cream.
Sounds exactly what literally is. I asked Riley that last night. Why do you love me? And she said, because you get me Culver's. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, which sounds like, that's just surface. But what that's been for me and Adeline across the course of her life, when we have time together, we have ice cream, either at home or we go get some soft serve or something like that. And so it's not just that Dad gives her ice cream, but that is time with Dad.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all they want. And so for us, especially now having 3, it's trying to just have, when we can, one-on-one time. And if it's going to the store, hey, Gavin, we're going to have some guy time. We still got to get something done.
Right.
But as we go, it's just going to be me and you. And so I think giving ourselves grace in that. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, extravagant TikTok highlight thing. It's just time is so important.
Well, and that's one thing, like, I have to do a better job at, is because we spend a fair amount of time with them in the summer because they're in the office.
Sure.
But we're always running the job site.
Yeah.
They're always doing this. They're always doing it. Like, it's not fun for them. And I've got, I've got to remember that, and just, like Emily drove by the splash pad the other day, and the kids reminded her that we didn't make it to the splash pad this year. And I'm like, year's not over yet, but, and one thing, like, one thing I feel like we all have to do is put our stupid phones down more.
Yeah.
We are flying to St. Thomas. First time Rhett's ever been on an airplane. A kid freaking walks like no nervous, like he's done it 100 times.
Yeah.
And almost a humongous dad fail.
Yeah.
The 3 days leading up, I worked like 20-hour days to get stuff done.
Yeah, right.
And I freaking overslept. And our flight left Indy at 7:14. And at 6:03, Emily woke me up, and she said, "What are you still doing here?" And 99% of the stuff was packed. Like I jumped up and I looked, and I yelled at Red. I'm like, "Get up!" I yelled at him like, "Get up!"
Yeah, right.
And we started heading there, and I started doing math, and I'm like, "It's like 14 minutes from the time I get there, and that's not even in the door.
Yeah, right.
Before the plane leaves."
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, "There's no way." Well, fortunately, we were trying to figure out some plans, and me and Emily had talked about me flying out of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So I knew they had a little later flight. So we was about to the east side of Indy, and I just made the executive decision. I said, "There's a Delta flight," and I never went. Normally, I always fly Southwest, and if I fly anything else, I just book it through Expedia. But for some reason, I booked it directly through Delta this time. I called Delta. They switched us to Cincinnati, and we just headed south.
Nice,
so
man.
we just had a little further drive to get to the airport, and but it was so then the flight out of Atlanta was a different flight into St. Thomas, and there was like half the plane was empty. So I was supposed to have a row seat. Rhett was in the middle. Well, once we realized nobody was there, he kept reaching over and looking out the window.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Bud, just scoot over there and sit there." He's like, "I can." And like I'm watching a show, and he just kept talking, so I kept taking out the earbuds.
Yeah.
Finally, I just shut the show off, took out the earbuds, and I moved over. And he just talked about the ocean, the trees. He's never flown. Like I've looked out a million times.
Yeah.
And that was so. Like I was like, all right, and then the other thing is like when we were in St. Thomas, we stayed on this little estate compound looking thing, and we had these little cottages, little 1-bedroom cottages.
Sorry, man.
You all right? You need some water?
No, coffee. All right, sorry.
No, you're good. But there was a pool right there, and the amount of time them kids spent in the pool was honestly, I don't even think they would have cared if we'd ever left that little resort area. Like I mean, Rhett would wake up and I'd be like, "Rhett, where you at?" He's like, "I'm in the pool, Dad." And like I'd be like, "Get out and eat breakfast." I will in a little bit. Like it was, we literally like all of us dads had to like yank the kids out of the pool, but it was right there. And I mean it was, and I told him, I said, once a quarter we're gonna do something. We went to an Alabama-Tennessee football game last year. We went to a Kentucky basketball game in the winter, but I just told him like once a quarter, me and you are going to do something. I said it can't be St. Thomas every time, bud. I love you, Dad. But it can't. But it's just to be intentional because, like you said, they really just want our time. They don't really care if it is or simple ice cream. Whatever that is. And I know, like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of things the kids were doing fun was with grandparents. Like, I find myself wanting my dad to enjoy our kids because, like, my dad worked so hard being a single parent to provide for us, and that's all he knew. And now he's finally slowing down, or at least the other day we're working on a house and he swung by. He was literally driving by, and I said, "Hey, Rhett, you want to go help Grandpa feed cows?" And like he just freaking ran out there, So, and my dad actually just told me and Emily yesterday that he wants to take Rhett on a weekend trip. I'm like, "Take him, go!" Like because unfortunately for me growing up, I only had one grandparent that I remember, and he was confined to a wheelchair from being paralyzed from a farming accident.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So like, I really enjoy seeing that the kids have. My dad's there. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are fantastic. Like I could call my mother-in-law right now and say, "Can you pick the kids up after school work?" Oh, absolutely.
That's a huge blessing.
They really enjoy that, which is nice for us because then when we go on a trip, the kids they're having more fun of us not being home. I remember the one time they're like, "When are you guys going on another trip?" I'm like, you little punk.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, we got this one coming. Well, how many days?
Yeah.
And the one time, Reagan was mad. My mother-in-law watched him. We had like dinner with friends or something, and for a couple hours, and then they were like 3 days later they were going to be with my in-laws for like a week for one of the trips we were taking, and we came home and Reagan like just ignored me and Emily, and I'm like, we're here, you can't act like we're not. I'm like, what are you mad about? She's like, you guys weren't gone long enough. I was like, you're going to be with your grandma for a week in like 2.5 days, like kid, you know. So
it's awesome. I think if you have family or sometimes it's friends that kids have those relationships with, get those memories with. That's a huge blessing. And so we've tried to say the same thing. It brings me joy to see my parents and Samantha's parents have so much fun with our kids, and that bond that they have with them is so vital. And even for us as parents, I just to encourage us, like, it can't all just be fun time.
Right.
All just about the kids. I mean, one of the things we're responsible for is helping our kids understand life isn't just all about you.
Yep.
And so to show them, hey, this is what hard work looks like. This is what dedication looks like. This is what setting goals and achieving goals looks like, is so valuable, because, again, we're setting them up hopefully for success when they're not in our house and things.
Well, and I read something one time, and it says our goal should be to raise good adults, not good kids.
That's good.
And it's something else though that I heard just this year. Jordan Peterson, he's a psychologist. You know, have you ever
I've heard of him. Yep.
He's pretty controversial because he's on the good side and talks about like how the whole transgender stuff is just ruining families and kids and lives, and it is, but I'm not going to go on that rabbit hole right now. But he also, I heard him at the Entree Leadership event that Dave Ramsey did, and he also, and I can't remember if it was him talking there or some clips that I've watched, but he also talked the importance of kids being kids and playing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like, you're right, like, I told him, like, I want the kids to see us struggle, work hard for this, because, like, I don't want them to grow up in 10 years and walk around with a chip on their shoulder, like, my mom and dad own a big roofing company. Like, no, you little punk. It's your mom and dad. You have nothing to do with it. You're just lucky you're born into this family, But I want them to enjoy it also, because I love my dad. He did a fantastic job, but that's one thing that he really struggled with. Like, it was always like, work. What are we going to do tomorrow? Work. What are we going to do tomorrow? Work. What are we going to do here? Work. What are we going to do here? Work. And, like, one thing when we were flipping houses, like, the kids helped a lot. And they would start complaining, like, I don't want to go to the flip house. I don't care. Get in the truck. But I would say when we get done, and, we went to Gatlinburg and rented a cabin, and it had a bed upstairs. And there was a bed upstairs and a bed downstairs, and there was a pool table. And they still freaking talk about sleeping in the bed upstairs because we only got a ranch-style house, so they don't understand that that's kind of common in two-story houses. But it's like...
Some people have a second story.
Like, oh my gosh, we slept upstairs. Do you remember that? So,
that's good.
And I mean, that's just... Like I said, that's one thing, like... And I feel like our generation, and even just a hair younger... They're doing a better job of enjoying experiences. Right. Where, maybe they didn't buy a house as early as other generations, but, enjoying that experience, a little more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And part of it, I think guys were inclined to just work hard because it's part of who God made us to be. Like, we have a purpose in this life, and it's to work hard, it's to provide, and it's to protect. And so that in itself isn't a bad thing, but it does mean that we have to be aware of when it's our only thing,
right?
And stepping back and doing that. And that was one thing. My father. I mean, I'm one of 9 kids. There was never a time in my life where my dad didn't have at least 2 jobs. Right. Most of the time, even 3. Right. And so growing up, that leadership instilled in all of us. Hey, you're going to work your butt off. Right. If you have a goal, it's going to take hard work, and no one's going to give it to you, and you got to do it. And so now the blessing of that is myself, so many of my siblings are being successful as adults because of that. He had to do that just to provide, really the basics. And so we didn't have a whole lot of family vacation. I can't imagine what it would have been like trying to take 9 of us. So I think in my life we went out to eat a few times, and I'm sure each time it ended with one of us or two of us fighting and Dad dragging us all out of the restaurant. But so just again, like as fathers, just setting a good example, but not letting it be your only example. Like, making time and experiencing things and enjoying things. I know for me, that's been a challenge. Like I just grew up thinking every minute you got to work hard.
Right.
And so it was almost, I didn't prioritize something fun, something just relational. And when we talk about being healthy and actually being a good husband and a good father, I know like I have to actually spend time with friends or do something I enjoy in order to be the best dad and father, or else I'm just stressed. And then I can't be.
So I just shared this clip on Facebook a few days ago, and it was a guy talking about the commandment of the Sabbath. And I mean, I'll use every excuse in the book not to take the day off. Like, I mean,
right.
I can always have a good excuse, you know, and like, then the guy said in there, like, then you use the BS excuse that it's just a busy season. And then he says, no, it's been a busy decade. And I'm like, holy cow. I sent it to Emily, and she like applauded me for swallowing my pride and admitting that, but like, seriously, it was like, and we just had a young family move from North Carolina to come and work for us. We bought a rental house for them to be in, and it's just kind of turned into just, and like, I really fretted telling them Saturday that I wasn't working Sunday on the house because there's still a lot. I mean, at that time, they had drywall in the kitchen, but I don't even think we had any kitchen cabinets. And I said, hey, I'm taking Sunday off. They're like, good. I'm like, oh. Because like, honestly, if I was renting a house and it was that, I would probably be like, no, I think you can work. So
right. But we'd really like kitchen sink sometimes.
So, I mean, just at the end of the day, just the importance of like being a dad, and another thing is like loving their mom. That is, I'm guilty. Where I want to push Emily to be the best version of herself. And when I see that doing something is out of her comfort zone, like I want her to do it more, but they have bad days. They need reinsured, because they're by far the strongest. Like, we'd be SOL if they weren't around.
We act tough. They are. They are. Let's just be
absolutely.
And I think that's huge. Just showing affection to your wife in front of your kids, speaking words of encouragement. For me, I'm not short on an opportunity to apologize and ask for forgiveness in front of my wife because I screw up so often. And so, like, even again, that humility of saying, hey, when I just missed the mark, to acknowledge it in front of my wife, in front of my kids, ask for forgiveness, to model the fact that really the expectation even on our kids isn't to be perfect.
Right.
It's to work hard. It's to do great things. But when you can't do it or when you mess up, that's okay too. Learn from it. Let's keep moving forward. So,
One thing that I learned with Emily, and we just started this probably a month or two ago, like, I love my wife, but they will hold on to something that happened like 6 months ago, and you're like,
I think she's down the hall. You might want to talk about
No. Because I told her, I said, all right, once a week, we're going to have a conversation. Anything that you're mad about, just let it out.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought I would defend myself. Now I'm just like, I'm sorry, that was stupid. Let's move on. But I'm like, and I told her, I was like, you're not bringing something up from 4 months ago. Like, bring it out right now.
Let's talk about it.
Because I mean, she's, like you said, they're strong. We act strong. They're really, they're really the strong ones. She's juggling, running jobs. She's being a mom, cleaning the house. All that kind of stuff. And we're in the process of relieving her from some stuff here at the office. She wants to be a mom, and that's the kids are young, that kind of stuff. So but no, like you said, like loving your spouse, loving your wife in front of your kids. And something I always try to do is I always try to like tell the kids how awesome their mom is and tell them how much they should appreciate like what she does. Like, you know, like the other day I was like, you better go out there and tell your mom thank you for supper right now. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. Yeah. You know, just that little stuff because, you know, but then my kids, maybe your kids don't do this. She'll take all three of them and I'll get a phone call 5 minutes later. Yeah. Will you yell at your kids right now? I'm like, you're making me be the bad guy. I'm like, guys, like literally, she was on a girls' trip a couple months ago. I don't even think the kids, they started one little fight the 2.5 days that she was gone. Yeah. She gets freaking home. She's not home 30 minutes, and they're just in a brawl. And I'm like, I was ready to kill them all. I was like, guys, you either straighten up or get out of the house. I was like, there's no in between. And I was like, I swear, honey, one time on Friday night, they got in a little about this. Yeah. I said all day Saturday, they didn't fight about anything. Sure. So
we've tried to do that even just in our own family, like just reiterating that you have the best mom. Yep. Like I try to tell my kids that like you got the best mom, and she'll say it. You got the best dad. Like we ain't perfect by any means. And you know what? There's probably better moms and better dads than us. But we are their mom and their dad. Yep. And so let's like speak that life into each other and try to certainly guard against us ever not being on the same page. Right. Or not the same team. You know, sometimes we see things differently. And working even some of that out in front of them is healthy, showing our kids how to disagree. But always at the end of the day, being each other's biggest cheerleader. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. So I think it's so foundational for kids to have that security, to know mom and dad both love me, but they love each other.
Right. Absolutely. That's huge. Absolutely. Yeah, yes, sir. Huge. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, man. We're talking about all the right things to do. Don't follow us.
Yeah, we don't do it. We don't do it near well enough. But you know, and you know, another thing is like, have you ever read any of Meg Meeker's books? No. She's got a book called Hero. Okay. I'll give you a copy of it because it's she's a pediatrician. I believe she's out. I think home for her is Michigan. Okay. But she's done some talking with Dave Ramsey. And it just talks about the importance of being a dad. Yeah. And just that, you know, you still need your dad at your age. Yeah. You know, man. And the book is such a good book that anybody, I mean, your dad could read it. You could read it. You know, and it pretty much talks about that you're your kids' hero. Right. And you know what? 99% of the times the kids look right past your flaws. Right. Even when they get older. And I mean, one thing that, I mean, all of us that teenagers are like, when we were teenagers, like, well, this dad does this, you know, it's like, you're a crappy dad, pretty much. You know, even if we didn't say it, we thought it. Yeah. But for me, the older I get, the older the kids get, like, I look back and I respect my dad for raising us practically on his own. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard as heck. Incredible. Yeah. With my wife that's extremely supportive. Yeah. You know, and I was just like, holy cow, like how the heck did he actually do it? You know? So, I mean, like I said, that's just one thing for me. You know, I just kind of reflect on that, you know, and it's like, you know, and one thing, the older I get, I look back, one thing I've done a better job at lately is like, when I guess looking not at somebody's flaws, but maybe trying to understand their flaws. Like the reason my dad's a slave driver was, and I know that's not politically correct. I don't mean it like that. Was my grandpa was paralyzed building a pond on the farm when my dad was in the first grade. Yeah. So besides the farmhand, my dad, as a first grader, had to step up and go help run the farm. Yeah. Like, no wonder all he knows is work. Yeah, that's like, right. He couldn't really have a child. Yeah. You know, so it's like, I mean, I get that, but I don't want to be, I feel like sometimes we end up doing the polar opposite of what our parents did. Right. Yeah. You know, and I want to teach my kids work ethic. Yeah. But I also, you know, so, I mean, that's one thing that I've kind of worked on, you know, and, you know, fortunately, like, you know, Emily is probably the most forgiving person ever. Like, it's her and a good friend of ours, Mary Jane. I respect them so much because they can know 99 just horrible things about you.
Yeah.
And they will both find that one thing.
Yeah, right.
And love you for that one thing. Like, honestly, there's a lot of people. We moved over here in 96. My dad moved over here, got a job with the state from Ohio. And my dad was hard on us. And I mean, he'd yell in front of, he'd discipline us in public. When we were in 4-H, I just had this conversation with a guy. Like, he practically pulled the truck and trailer up with the cattle in it and said, "They're yours.
Wow.
Go wash them." Like, when my younger brothers got into 4-H, he kind of helped them a little bit. For us older kids, I mean, there was all of it. Like, and then when we turned 16, it was like, we could drive. I'm like, "Dad, you coming to the fair? I'll be there when you're showing."
Yeah.
Okay, Dad. You know, but I mean, it's just, there was a lot of people that didn't like my dad because he was so hard on us, you know. So on that, like, when people can look at like the imperfections and like respect them, you know, with everything, it means, I don't know. It's just, as a world, we want to complain about everything and not, like I said, they do a really good job about looking, you know, and not holding on to things, you know, like my wife will say, my father-in-law, he was a bad alcoholic, and he cleaned up. And, you know, she's like, "You know what? I see the hurt, I see the anger, I see the regret in his eyes."
Sure.
That she's like, I'll never bring it up to him. Like, it's, you know, I'm not going to beat him up, you know, over that. And I mean, that's, like I said, that's one thing I've always respected about Emily and Mary Jane is like, they can genuinely like see the good in people. Yeah. And I just feel like as a country, as a culture, like we don't want to do that anymore. Like we just want to look at, you know,
point out all the flaws.
Right.
Yeah. But man, there's so much freedom when you're willing to acknowledge everybody's got a story.
Right.
Everybody's got a reason. Like, most people probably had no idea about your grandpa. Right. They just saw your dad where he was. But everybody's got a backstory. And I think, honestly, being a part of Celebrate Recovery, it's made me more sensitive to and compassionate toward everybody's story. Because people come into Celebrate Recovery, they work on a hurt, habit, or hang up. They get incredible transformation from stuff that just hadn't, whether it was an addiction or behavior issue or relationship struggle or just emotional thing. But when they share their testimony and you hear, not to blame it on their child, but when you hear a little bit of their backstory, it's like, oh, I get it. Like, you went through some stuff and I'm just thankful that you're here. Yep. And so if we can have that kind of mindset with just each other, friends, family, strangers, to realize everybody's got stuff. Everybody's got a story. and to allow freedom to like see the good, even maybe the good that they don't see in themselves. Yep. So I just we were at another church, Real Life Church, which is another church just in Greenfield, and they had a gathering for several churches to come together with our staff. And one of the pastors from a church in Fishers gave just a 30-minute talk. It was so good on leading from humility and leading out of a sense of transparency. And he said, oftentimes we can't see the best in others because we're trying to play it off like we're perfect. And we're so stuck on, like, I need to have this aura, or I need people to affirm me. And so I can't possibly give my love and encouragement to someone else because really I'm just stuck on myself. And that was challenging because I think of all the times where just naturally you get stuck on yourself and you can't see that benefit of someone else, or those positives in someone else. Well,
and some training stuff that we've went through as a company over the last 9 months, was this one exercise, and we did this at a revolt retreat, and you had to like look in people's eyes, and you couldn't speak. Yeah. And there's this kind of goes both ways. Like, what do you see in that person? Is actually what you see in yourself. Yeah. So like, if you look for positives, like you can admire that, If you look for negatives,
Yep.
And then like we had to say this, and it was the first time we did it. It was a group of us. We're all business owners. We're all alpha males.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and like the first three people, like we just looked in their eyes. Mm-hmm. We couldn't say a word.
Yeah.
We just had to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't like hug. Like it was just kind of like, and then like the third or fourth person,
Yeah.
like we started like speaking like what we saw.
Yeah.
And then like we all sat down and like, yeah, everything you just saw in them, how's that, you know, how's that practically a direct reflection of your life? And you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's,
you know, and it was like
challenging exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, one thing that I've tried to do a better job at is looking into like, how did I create this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you know, there are no accidents,
right.
You know, and it's just, it's a different way of looking at things. And, you know, one thing to go back to my dad was a gentleman over by that house we just bought, old Ed Meyer. He's great dude, was big in 4-H when I was a kid. You know, we were swapping stories, we were laughing, you know, and, you know, he said something the other day. He's like, man, your dad was hard on you kids, but he had a big heart, you know? And it was like, holy cow. And something else we do as humans, is we have like what our head tells us and what our heart tells us.
Yeah.
And our head is like us almost answering questions. Like we think, like me answering questions like I think Paul wants me to say.
Yeah, that's right.
Where my heart is really who I am.
Yeah, sure.
And like you and me both know when you're talking to somebody, like, okay, they're not talking from their heart.
Right.
They're completely talking from their head.
Yeah.
You know, and they call it your nerd, like who you know, present to be. And they say my nerd is the Incredible Hulk. Like I want to walk around just all ready to explode. And I'm like, holy, that is like, like I have to watch myself. You know?
Right.
So that's just kind of, you know, that's something for me that it's like, all right, so I try to sit down and just, you know, even with my team, like try to have like, all right, here's my heart, guys.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to come across as a jerk here.
Yeah, sure.
But we do have to clean this up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm here for you.
Right.
If you want to be here, be here. If you don't, please don't. Like it's better off for your family, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. So I guess tell us a little bit how you got into ministry. Like, you know, everybody has a story, like you said.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know.
Sure. Well, I'm blessed. I grew up at Brandywine Church of Servant. Now, my family found that when I was 8 years old. So grew up, got mentored, discipled there, made some commitments of faith to follow Jesus when I was in 8th grade, and then get baptized when I was a sophomore. Our youth pastor mentored me quite a bit, and even in high school, he kind of spoke into me that, hey, I think you got a calling on your life for ministry. I had a plan that wasn't that, though. I thought, you know, I was into athletics, so I wanted to go be a teacher, coach, and then would volunteer in ministry. But it was really my sophomore year of college. One of my wife's best friends, Todd, who was one of my high school teammates, had been diagnosed with cancer a year before and then ended up passing that year, her freshman year, my sophomore year. And just it was just a season as I journeyed through that grief of just God really saying, hey, what do you want to give your life to? And it wasn't a forceful, like, you got to do this or you're going to be miserable. I still felt like some freedom. I could still pursue teaching and still have an impact on people's lives. But it was just this undeniable invitation to change my major, start studying religion and philosophy, give more attention to ministry on campus, and then knowing that, hey, this was gonna be what I give my life to. And honestly, part of that was seeing so many of my friends journey through that season without any hope. You know, just the disparity of, man, I lost another teammate when I was in high school, sophomore year, to a car accident. And then we lost, so many people, and see my own peers in high school, young adult life, without really any hope of heaven. And it was like, man, I got to do something about this. And I feel like I got the greatest gift, the confidence that, man, Jesus actually loves us. He gave his life for us. And we can have a faith that not only gives us strength to persevere in this life, but an assurance that, hey, when this life's over, we got a hope here. And so that God just orchestrated those events to really call me into that ministry, and I'm just so grateful for it, man. I would love to do other things too, and I get to do something, but I feel like for my life, it's just a clear calling that this is what I'm going to give my life to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's like I said earlier, there are no accidents, and there's a reason that you're a Brandywine. There's a reason why me and Emily went there that week. And it's just, I mean, and that's the same thing. Like sometimes when I wonder what the heck I'm doing, if I'm really supposed to be doing this,
Sure.
and then a guy like Jacob reaches out from North Carolina and is like, hey, I want to move and come and sell roast for you. And I'm like, holy cow. Like,
that's right.
I know it's a lot bigger than, me.
That's right.
Like the entire Revolt group. I joined that 2.5 years ago. It's about leadership, legacy. And like, we really like, I try to pour into the team. Like I want it to be way more than just a job for them, so we had the couples retreat, and the group has grown quite a bit. That they put us in smaller tribes just so we've got some closeness with 8 or 10 of the guys, and our tribe is one guy. Ty is a good friend of mine. He does about $30 million a year in revenue. Freaking. He's a stud in business.
Sure.
The most humble, gentle guy would fly out here tonight to help me with something. That's who Ty is. And just, and then there's a good guy, a phenomenal guy, John. And, he's got a small business. He's trying to grow it. He looks up to me because I've got a bigger team.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, man, you've been in business longer than I've been alive. Like, I look up to that, But so we're... like I said, it's not a faith group, but I think you got to have faith or be retarded, one or the other. No, not once again trying to be politically correct there. To be a small business owner, and so I'm just we're talking, and John reached out to me. He's like, hey man, he's like, I want to get baptized. He goes, and my church has happened to be baptizing people. The week that we're in Punta Cana for the couples retreat. And he goes, and I feel closer. He goes, I love my church, but he goes, I feel like you guys are more of my brothers than the church, like the church community is. And, and I'm like, all right. And he asked if me and a gentleman from Dayton, JP's his name, phenomenal man, would baptize us in the ocean.
That's awesome.
Well, John was like, hey man, let's just have a small little, intimate session. And our leader, Hunter, was like, if you're all right with it, I want to invite the entire group. Well, long story short, I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong because now I'm totally forgetting it. I believe 18 people end up baptized.
Man, that's amazing.
It was like an altar call out in the middle of the ocean. And John asked me, and I didn't feel worthy. I just didn't. I went out there with JP. We did it. And then there was a gentleman there that works for John Maxwell's team, and he's phenomenal. I believe RD's his name, phenomenal guy. I believe he was actually a pastor before he went to work for John. And like I said, he literally did an altar call out in the ocean. And then there's some good friends of mine and Emily's, Brandon and Ashley. They own a roofing company up in Wisconsin. And me and Brandon's gotten a little closer. Emily and Ashley has gotten a little closer. And Brandon's got a lot of questions about faith and God. And he's, his childhood was pretty crappy, know. And so we're sitting there, and Brandon wanted to get baptized. And he even said, like, guys, I'm not following Jesus the way I should be. Like, I've got a ton of questions, but he's like, I just feel like, like I need to. So he stepped forward, and then his wife stepped forward. And I'm standing there, and like when I see Brandon step forward, I got sunglasses on, but I'm weeping like a little baby. And my wife, like we said, their wives are tough. She just doesn't show emotion. I look over there, and she's crying when Ashley steps forward. I'm like, are you crying? She's like, shut up. And she's trying to hide it. But it was like, it was so cool to see that, because like then a lot of men stepped forward, and then we turned around, and then their wives stepped forward. And it was like, holy cow, like 18 people were baptized. And on a revolt trip, and it's funny because the haters of that group, they call us religious and all, like they try to like demonize us, and we're all just a bunch of dudes that genuinely like want to do the right thing, you know. And so that was so cool that I felt bad because one guy that does some mechanical work, Pastor Steve, north of Knightstown, he had reached out, and he's like, and I mean. And we were just talking about clearance too. I'm so fortunate to have a couple trustworthy mechanics that I just know, like, whatever they say, like I don't have to question, like, is $50 too high or $200 too high? I'm like, you know, and Pastor Steve had reached out, and he's like, hey, no obligation. He's like, but we do this church camp, and usually, and I was like, what do you need? Yeah. And he goes, would you sponsor any kids? I'm like, absolutely. And he told me that probably 10 kids were going to need sponsors. I'm like, I'll just sponsor them all. He's like, do what? I was like, just let me know the number. So like he turned around and and then he called me like right before we left for that trip. And I think he was a little reluctant to tell me how many kids. It ended up being 11. I'm like, so you need, and I figured out it was like a couple $100 a kid. Yeah. And I owed him for some mechanical work he done. And I was like, just send that on the last invoice, write them total that I owe you, because if you tell me right now, I'm going to forget before I get back to the office to tell the girls. And so then, like, after the trip, like, so we get back from Punta Cana, and that was the week before was when they had their church camp. Yeah. 2 kids had given their life to Christ. So, like, he calls me all jacked up to tell me about that. Yeah. I'm all jacked up to share to him about the 18, you know. And then I kind of felt like I kind of dampened dampened what he was talking about because, like, you know, he had 2, we had 18, you know, but it was like that right there. Once again, I was like, okay. I'm where I need to be. That's right. Like, you know, and I'll admit, I'm not the type that's going to walk up to being like, hey, do you know Jesus? Yeah. Like, I would genuinely, like, I've had people come up to me or text me afterwards. They're like, something's different about you. Sure. Yeah. And like, part of me wants, I told somebody this the other day, I cuss, but I still love Jesus, so don't forget that, you know. But part of me wants, like, the way I handle things. And, like, you know, I'm human too, and there's some days it's like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, no, like, that's not the right way to do it, you know. Sure. So, I don't know. It's just, it's cool to, you know, it's awesome that you're working in the church. But, like, one thing I don't want people to forget, like, your ministry can be your work. Oh, yeah. Like, you know, we definitely need godly leaders out there, you know, even inside business. Like, you know, people in this, but, you know, I want foundational leadership that, you know, we had a conversation about a slight issue. I was like, guys, I need you guys to speak up about this. Like, you know, our core values. Like, you know that right there. It shouldn't even never got to me. Like, it should have been stopped before. Right. So. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just want to encourage anybody listening, like, wherever you are in life, like, you have an opportunity for leadership and influence. And it's oftentimes that's a circle of people that no one else is connected with, or no one else, especially if we talk about, you know, sharing the love of Christ with somebody, you're going to get to connect with so many people that I will never cross paths with because you have this position. One thing that we say at Brandywine is that we're all just ordinary people empowered by God, making a difference together wherever we are. And so there's no hierarchy of, oh, hey, if you're a pastor, you're the one who shares Jesus, or if you're just brand new, you guys. No, we're just, that's the message of the Bible, is actually that God sees people and wants to empower them to make a difference, and leading the right way, living the right way. And when we mess up, repenting and confessing the right way, so that, again, it's not a perfection thing that we're going for, but even, like, that's not normal. When I make a mistake, I own it, and I make amends directly to somebody. They're like, why would you do that? Well, because this slate needs to be clean, and this slate needs to be clean. I don't need to be carrying around any baggage, relational baggage, that whether that's me and you or me and God. Like, I don't have time to be weighed down with that. Like, I want to be free from that. So yeah, I always encourage people, like, honestly, there are times where doing church work, being employed by the church, being called to pastoring, like, so much of my effort is shepherding, caring for the flock, that if I'm not careful, I'm not spending time with people who aren't part of the church.
And I know that's vital too. And so even Samantha and I have just said, hey, like we gotta guard our life so we can be intentionally relational with people who don't know Jesus.
Right.
It like that. Our neighbors, we've got incredible neighbors. We need to have a passion to spend time with them. Some of them are connected to the church, some are not. Like we need to be available to people. So yeah, just encouragement. Like wherever you are, whatever you're doing, the Bible says you can make that an offering to God. You can do it as if you're doing it to the Lord, and He'll use it to bless you and bless other people.
Absolutely. Well, that was like the other day I was at Lowe's and poor lady had to ring it up like 4 times. And it was funny because I had like 14 of this, 12 of this, 8 of this. So at the end I was just like 14 of this, 12 of this, 8 of this, 2 of this. And I was just laughing. I was like, have a great day. Like genuinely, like that's something I've tried to do a better job at of just like, hey, have a great day.
Yeah, sure.
Because like I walked into a supplier the other day. I drove to Fort Wayne to get some shingles. I left my house at like 5 o'clock. And I walk in, and there's 6 people sitting at the front desk.
Yeah.
And this is how they all were.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were all probably praying, I hope he doesn't look at me. I hope he doesn't look at me.
Right.
And finally, the 5th person, I tried to make eye contact, finally was like, can I help you?
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, like I'm thinking as an owner of a business, like I would like be like putting my team in headlocks and if that's how they treated our customers.
Sure.
Like, you know, like I get it, it's 7. I mean, I was there before they officially opened. They let me in, you know. I get it, it's early in the morning, but like I don't know, life's too short. You know, like you said, you've lost some good friends while you were in school or right out of school. Same scenario. I lost my best friend that happened to be Emily's cousin, you know. And there's so many days that I'm just like, man, like Kyle like made the best of every freaking thing and always put a smile on people's faces. And, you know, I struggled. I'm like, why did he leave this so early? Like the impact that he would have made. And then I see his nephews play with my kids. And like there's a couple times I've teared up like, oh man, like Kyle's kids should be here playing. Like they should be doing stupid stuff like me and Kyle did, and you know that kind of stuff. So I mean, as we wrap up, any words of wisdom, any final advice? You know, I think it's been fun. Like I've really enjoyed this conversation of just like dad and you know leader kind of talk. You know, so thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I think just. We're created for this. We're just created for genuine community, not necessarily podcasts. I've just tried to just find joy in that. Whenever God puts people in your life, you're one of them. You guys have been such a blessing to Sam and I, and even though seasons have changed and we don't get as much time, there's still those people in your life that you know that they're a gift to you, and to acknowledge that and to express that gratitude and to say, man, you mean a lot to me. Thanks for time together. That's important. So thanks, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, as we wrap up, just go make it a great day. You know, just, I don't know, go shine your light. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, of course, I mean, use that light. But even if you're not, like, just go be a light to this dark world. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.